Some movies don't just scare you, they linger longer than the credits roll. Especially when it comes to the uncomfortable and shocking deaths of children in these movies. These aren't your average horror flicks. They push boundaries and challenge what we think is acceptable. And it's not just about the gore, it's about challenging our perspectives and showing us the truth that they reveal. What makes these horror movies unforgettable? What did they done that makes them harder to watch than others? Stick tuned, and we are gonna look at the top 10 movies that dare to go too far.
Rapid Grannies came out in 1988 and it was directed by Emmanuel Karen, and it is just as wild as it sounds. The story: two sweet little old ladies get a mysterious birthday gift and boom, they turn into flesh-eating demons, and when the family shows up to celebrate, things get bloody fast. Now, this isn't your typical haunted house movie. It's full of chaos, and yes, even the kids aren't safe. One of the most disturbing parts in the movie happens in an off-screen implication where one of the children and the family are attacked. Something that you don't usually see in horror, especially back in the 1980s. It hits different when innocence gets caught in the carnage when it comes to horror movies. The movie caused a stir because of scenes like that. Some countries flat out banned it, others just cut the entire scene. Not surprisingly, this was a low budget, gory movie that didn't care about playing it safe. And that's exactly why it found a cult following on VHS. Horror fans love a film that crosses the line, and this one jumps right over it. Fun fact, the crew was so small, some actors doubled as production assistants. Talk about multitasking in a murder house. Personally, it's gory, goofy, and kind of brilliant. Not for everyone, but if you like horror, bloody, weird, and unapologetic, this one delivers. Cooties. Cooties dropped in 2014 and directed by Jonathan Millet and Curry Morton, and it's basically a zombie outbreak, but the infected are only children. A tainted chicken nugget kicks off the chaos at an elementary school, and suddenly the students go rage mode. The teachers, they are the last line of defense. Yeah, not exactly your average PTA meeting. Now, here's the twist. These kids are both the threat and the victims. Some have to be taken down by the adults just to survive. It's brutal, but also plays with dark comedy. Kind of the Shaun of the Dead meets a school lockdown drill. There's a scene where a teacher takes out a zombie with a dodgeball, and it's wild, ridiculous, and somehow still tense. A lot of people don't know how to feel about it. Some praise it for flipping the usual zombie formula. Elijah Wood even called it a reverse zombie movie. Others were uncomfortable watching grown-ups fight off infected kids, even if they were clearly not human anymore. The film definitely didn't hold it back. It mixed score with satire, and while it might not be for everyone, it made a bold point. Horror doesn't always have to follow the rules, and in this case, it didn't even try. It, by Stephen King, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. It Chapter 1, 2017, and It Chapter 2, 2019, directed by Andy Muschietti, is one of the biggest horror hits in the decade. Based on Stephen King's classic novel, it's set in the cursed town of Derry, Maine, where a shape-shifting evil, usually seen as a creepy clown, named Pennywise, the dancing clown, feeds on fear and its favorite target? Children. The film wastes no time. In the opening scene, George Dembro, aka Georgie, is pulled into a sewer by Pennywise, and it's one of the most shocking child deaths ever shown on screen. It's not just the act, it's the way it plays out. The bright yellow raincoat, the paper boat, the fake friendly voice, it's a pure nightmare fuel, and it sets up the tone on no kid is safe. Other scenes, like the disappearance of Betty Ripson, build on that fear. It's not just gore, it's the emotional punch. That's why it hit so hard for audience. The fear felt real. Pennywise became a horror icon again, and the movie crushed at the box office, and it hit over $1.1 billion between both chapters. Fun fact, Bill Stungard called the movie its eyes in two different directions. Without CGI, that unsettling stare, all real. This one didn't hold back. Scary, tragic, and hauntingly effective. It made childhood fear terrifying again. Pet Sematary, released in 1989, directed by Mary Limbert, is one of Stephen King's darkest stories brought to the screen. It's about a family who moves into a quiet town, also in Maine, just like the previous movie, but only to discover a creepy burial ground behind their home. Things buried there don't stay dead for long, but they do definitely come back, but different. The most unforgettable moment? The death of little Gage Greed. 1 minute, he's an adorable toddler chasing a kite. The next, he's hit by a speeding truck. It's not just shocking, it's devastating. What makes it worse is the emotional weight behind it. His dad, broke by the grief, buries Gage in the cursed ground, thinking he can undo the tragedy. But when Gage returns, he's no longer the same sweet little boy. He's something far more terrifying. The scene was controversial, especially for the late 80s. Child deaths was rarely shown so directly, and the emotional pain hit harder than the gore. Parents watching it were horrified. Stephen King actually wrote the book after his own son almost ran into the road. That fear turned into one of the most gut-wrenching horror stories ever. It's not just scary, it's heartbreaking. Gage's story proves that sometimes dead is better. And Pet Sematary doesn't just haunt, it sticks with you. The Blob, which was released in 1988 and directed by Chuck Russell, takes the cheesy 1958 original and cracks up the horror, the gore, and the guts. The story is simple but effective. A strange alien goo crashes on Earth and starts devouring and dissolving people alive. Yeah, no slow build up here. The Blob is fast, hungry, and unstoppable. What was the scene that really shocked people, you may ask? It was when a child named Eddie, probably around the age of 10 years old, gets swallowed alive. Most viewers thought he'd make it because, it's a kid. It's including myself. I thought that. But nope, he tries to escape through the sewers, only to be pulled under by the Blob in full slimy terror. It's brutal, not just because of what happened, but because we're trained to think that children in movies are untouchable. This film said, nope, not in our watch. The moment really set the tone. This isn't your typical safe horror flick. It made audiences very uncomfortable, especially in the 1980s, when child deaths were very rare in movies. Critics were divided. Some called it tasteless. Others praised it for taking a real risk. Fun fact, the Blob in the version was a government experiment gone wrong, not just a space thing. Adds a little Cold War paranoia in there. My take, it's gutty, horrifying, and still managed to surprise. No one is safe here, not even the kids. I love it though. Jaws. Jaws was released in 1975 and directed by Steven Spielberg. It is the shark movie. The story follows a seaside town that suddenly becomes a hunting ground for a massive, giant, great white shark. 1 minute, everyone's enjoying the beach. The next, total panic. Now, the death that really hits hard is the young Alex Kittner. He's just out there on a yellow raft while everyone is relaxing. Then, boom, blood hits the water. People scream. Chaos explodes. Spielberg doesn't show too much, but just enough to make your stomach drop. The scene changed everything. It told audiences that even a child wasn't safe from this shark, and that raised the stakes in a big way. Viewers were shocked. A child dying on screen, especially in a summer blockbuster, was bold. Critics praised it for the emotional punch, while others called it too much, but it worked. The fear became real. That moment pushed the town leaders to finally take the threat seriously. There's a fun behind the scenes fact. The actress who played Alex's mom actually slapped Ray Shader 17 times during filming to the perfect take. Brutal. My take, it's one of the most effective child death scenes in horror. Not as gory as I thought it would be, but still just as haunting and unforgettable. Hereditary. Hereditary was released in 2018 and it was directed by Ari Aster, and it isn't your typical horror film. It's a slow burn that unreels the dark secret of a family grieving the loss of their matriarch, only to discover that they are tied to a demonic cult. The film is unsettling, psychological, and terrifying, particularly when it comes to the death of young Charlie. Charlie's death, unexpected, brutal, and utterly shocking, happens too quickly. One moment, she's in the car, struggling to breathe from an allergic reaction, and the next, she was decapitated in an instant as the car swerves into the side of the road. It's one of those moments that leaves you in complete disbelief, and it hits with a level of dread that almost is unbearable. What makes it so impactful is how it flips the entire tone of the film. Up until that point, the movie is about grief, but with Charlie's death, everything shifts into something far, far darker. It's not just a shock for the sake of it, it sets the stage for the real horror that follows. In my view, this child death wasn't that scary, it was chillingly effective. It completely transformed the film to something far more sinister and unforgettable. Is All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Eve, released in 2013 and was directed by Damien Leone. It is a horror anthology film that takes a chilling dive into disturbing footage discovered on a VHS tape. It's gritty, raw, and features a truly unsettling introduction to the infamous Art the Clown, a figure who would go on to terrorize audiences in Terrifier. One of the most disturbing elements of All Hallows Eve is the way it handles child harm and death. The film doesn't shy away from depicting these dark implications, making it one of those movies that you're really likely to remember for a long time. Whether you want to or not, the child death moments here aren't shown in a graphic or gore-heavy way, but are still deeply unsettling. leaving a lasting emotional impact. Well, it really sets the film apart was its willingness to push these boundaries that most mainstream studios wouldn't dare to push. The scenes involves Art the Clown and tense and disturbing, and that sense of fear lingers long after the movie is over. Interesting and fun fact is that this was the very first appearance of Art the Clown in a full feature film, which would lead to the bigger role in Terrifier. Art the Clown did appear in The Ninth Circle before this, but this was the first feature-long film that featured Art the Clown. In my view, the child death scenes and overall horror aren't just disturbing for shock value, they push the limits of what we expect from an indie horror, making it a chilling and effective experience. Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3, which released on October 11, 2024, is the latest installment in the horror series directed by, again, Damien Leone. The film continues the saga of Art the Clown, portrayed by David Howard Thornton, as he unleashes chaos on the residents of Miles County during Christmas Eve. Sienna Shaw, played by Lauren Lovera, returns to confront Art alongside his new accomplice, a possessed Victoria Hayes. A notable and unsettling moment in the film is the death of a child, which occurs off screen, but it's implied through reactions of the characters. And of course, the sounds of the child being murdered. This event significantly impacts the narrative, intensifying the urgency for Sienna to protect her family and adding emotional depth to the character's motivation. Some of you might also note that Art the Clown did not just unalive more than one child. He also unalived around two more kids in a mall scene where he blew up two children while the children were opening presents while he was disguised as Santa Claus. The film has sparked controversy due to its graphic content, particularly the depictions of child harm and death. While some viewers appreciate the unflinching portrayal, others find it distressing, leading to divided reactions and discussions about the boundaries of horror cinema. In my opinion, Terrifier 3 is a chilling continuation of the Terrifier franchise, offering a relentless scare and pushing the envelope for horror fans. However, it's not for the faint of heart, as most of you may know already, given its intense and graphic scenes. This is actually one of my most favorite franchises of all time, and I can't wait until Terrifier 4 releases. When Evil Lurks, released in 2023, and it was directed by Damian Rugna. It is a brutal, spine-chilling Argentinian horror film that refuses to pull any punches. The plot follows two brothers trying to stop a demonic infection from ravaging the rural town. Sounds like a typical horror setting, right? Well, when Evil Lurks takes it to a whole new level of disturbing. One of the most unsettling parts of the film is the death of a child. As the demonic infection spreads, a young boy becomes one of its victims. What makes it even more unsettling is how the child's fate is graphically portrayed, with the film not hesitating to show the horrifying transformation and ultimate destruction. It's a shocking moment that leaves the emotional punch, forcing both characters and the audience to confront the true horror of the situation. There's in particular two graphic child deaths in this movie. The first one is when a young girl gets literally mauled to death by a giant dog who gets possessed by the demon. The other is what I previously mentioned of the young boy. The young boy gets kidnapped by his possessed mother, and later in the film we see the mother scooping out the child's brain like a bar of peanut butter, or taking out his brain matter like a bucket of popcorn, like in a movie theater. This one very much shocked me. The film has caused a stir for its unapologetic approach to child deaths, disturbing even in the most seasoned horror fans. While some praise the realism and rawness, others criticize it for going too far. An interesting fact of When Evil Lurks is known for its bleak, non-holistic tone, which leaves no room for hope, setting it apart from many Western horror films that are often offer some kind of redemption. For me, it is very chilling, effective, definitely not a film for the faint of heart, similar to the other ones. If you're into intense, no holds barred horror, this one is for you. And for me, I love this film, similar to Terrifier 3, because it pushes boundaries and it's not afraid to, honestly, frankly, make people offended. And that's why I love about horror. Now, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you want to see more deep dives into the scariest movies out there, and to follow more for more horror content.